Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. My name is Cole Mercer. I'm 34 years old, former mechanical engineer turned full-time survivalist. Before the world changed, I lived off-grid in the Allegheny Mountains, outside of Franklin, West Virginia. A decade ago, I started building my bug-out cabin after a close call during Hurricane Sandy. People laughed when I stockpiled MREs, Geiger counters, potassium iodide, and Faraday bags. But on the morning of October 14th, I stopped being the crazy one. I remember the exact moment it started. I was in the greenhouse, replacing an old pressure valve on the hydroponic system. My dog, Ash, a Belgian Malinois, started whining before I even heard it. The low, mournful howl of the National Emergency Alert System pierced through the Pine Valley. Not the usual test. This was a real one. I ran back to the main cabin, breath ragged in the cold mountain air. The radio was already on, always was. NOAA band 162.400 MHz, the same voice that had delivered winter storm warnings and flood alerts over the years, now said something I never expected. This is not a test. NORAD confirms multiple intercontinental ballistic launches inbound to the continental United States. Estimated time to impact, 17 minutes. Take immediate shelter. Repeat. This is not a test. I froze. My training, all the drills, they screamed in my head like flares going off. 17 minutes. I grabbed Ash and bolted for the hatch. My shelter was beneath the main cabin, reinforced with poured concrete and earth. 8 feet underground, lined with lead shielding and stocked with 6 months of supplies. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I sealed the outer hatch, locking the airlock behind us. The interior pressure doors hissed shut. Emergency LED strips flickered to life. The air was dry and cold, the faint hum of the solar inverter audible through the floor. I sat in the center of the shelter, holding Ash, staring at the radiation monitor, waiting. And then it came. A low rumble like distant thunder, the kind that vibrates through your bones. My Geiger counter beeped, then screamed. Peaks of 9,000 CPM. Fallout had begun. I didn't cry, I didn't pray, I just sat there. The digital clock ticked past 11:32 AM. The world above was no longer the one I knew. The first 3 days were silence. No news, no voices on the ham radio, no satellite phone responses. The shortwave bands were filled with static and fragmented Morse. I rotated through the bands every few hours. HF, VHF, even CB, nothing but ghost signals, and the occasional looping EAS warning from some distant automated repeater. By day 4, I started logging what I could detect from inside. The radiation outside was still lethal, peaking around 500 rads, hour in open air, according to the sensors I'd rigged to an external dosimeter mast. That was more than enough to kill someone in an hour. I occupied my mind by running checks, air filters, water purification, inventory. I had 184 MREs, 320 freeze-dried meals from Mountain House and ReadyWise, 5 55-gallon drums of filtered water, and a gravity-fed ceramic water system for backup. Power was stable. 2 Tesla Powerwalls charged by a solar array mounted on a tree-mounted pivot post high above the shelter. It would need maintenance eventually, but for now, it was working. Ash sensed the unease. He didn't leave my side. I tried not to talk out loud too much. It felt haunted otherwise. On the 5th day, I picked up a voice. It was barely audible. An amateur operator transmitting from the edge of the blast zone, Richmond, Virginia. Saw the flash, whole sky lit up, radiation climbing, God help us. And then silence. The next transmission I heard didn't come until the 9th day. That one came from a guy named Marcus, call sign K4ZFM. He was a retired paramedic broadcasting from a converted delivery van outside Roanoke. Said he'd built a makeshift Faraday cage in a shipping container. His wife was gone, vaporized when DC got hit. He kept calling out every day, reading weather reports and radiation levels like he was still on the job. We started a routine, 8 p.m. UTC check-ins. He'd talk. I'd respond if conditions were stable. Over the next few days, I got clearer pieces of the puzzle. There had been 27 confirmed strikes on CONUS targets. Strategic command bases, Offutt, Minot, Cheyenne Mountain, major urban centers, New York, DC, Los Angeles, Chicago, Atlanta, Dallas. The West Coast had been hit hardest. San Diego and San Francisco were essentially glass. No word from Seattle. No word from anyone official, for that matter. FEMA was silent. NORAD was offline. The last known broadcast from the White House was recorded 23 minutes after the first strike. A heavily scrambled digital message, likely sent from the Mount Weather Emergency Operations Center. After that, nothing. I spent day 12 upgrading the air filters and scraping external radiation readings. The outside was slowly decaying, now down to 75 rad/hour. Still dangerous, but survivable for short durations with proper shielding. I checked the map I'd printed out years ago and marked out the likely fallout paths based on wind patterns and what I could deduce from the remaining NOAA updates. The jet stream had carried heavy fallout from the Midwest across to the Appalachians. We were in the edge zone here. Lucky. By day 14, I realized I needed more data than my shelter could provide. My external dosimeter couldn't map radiation spread without moving around. And worse, my batteries for the Geiger counter were running low. I had spares, but if this was going to be long-term, I needed redundancy. That's when I decided to go topside. The re-entry protocol I followed was by the book, at least the one I'd written myself over the years. Tyvek hazmat suit, activated charcoal mask, full-face respirator with dual P100 filters, and an old military-issued M9A1 chemical detection kit. I added my AK-74, chambered in 45.5, 39mm, not for the infected, but for the desperate. Ammo was light, compact, and accurate. I carried 4 30-round Bakelite mags and a Glock 19 on my thigh. Ash stayed in the decontamination chamber. I wasn't risking his lungs. When I opened the outer hatch, it was like stepping onto another planet. The forest was grey. Dead trees dusted with fine white ash. The air was dry, bitter, electric. I moved slow, checking the Geiger counter every few feet. 18 rads/hour in open shade. Higher in exposed areas. I stayed low, moving through the drainage ditch I'd trenched years ago, which now acted like a natural radiation buffer. I checked the solar array, partially scorched but still functioning. I wiped the panels and swapped out a burned regulator. The system was feeding power again, a small success, but in the shadow of a ruined world, even marginal victories felt enormous. I stood up, taking a slow breath through my respirator. The ash that clung to everything was dry as flour, kicked up in thin puffs with every movement. The air outside was still hot with invisible danger, radiation hanging like humidity, the kind that didn't sting or burn, but slowly cooked you from the inside. Back inside the airlock, I began the decom process. The outer suit went into a sealed barrel, lined with leaded plastic. I washed twice with stored water treated with iodine crystals and baking soda. Ash wagged his tail behind the containment screen, his eyes locked on mine like he sensed something heavy was coming. He was right. After I logged the radiation levels and uploaded the array status into my local server, I sat down and opened the hand-marked map again. I traced a gloved finger along Route 220, connecting Franklin to Harrisonburg, then westward toward Winchester. I didn't know Nora Lane. Didn't know if her signal was old, automated, or real-time, but it was something. The idea of other people had taken on mythical weight, something I couldn't ignore anymore. Isolation was safety, but it was also a slow death if things started to break down. And they would. I wasn't naive enough to believe otherwise. I spent the next 2 days preparing. I cut my caloric intake, packed 3 weeks' worth of freeze-dried food into vacuum-sealed Mylar pouches, rechecked my external dosimeters, and updated my fallout maps using the latest jet stream data from NOAA satellite packets that still pinged once or twice a day. The wind had shifted north-northeast. Fallout levels had dropped below 5 rads, hour along the river valleys. Dangerous, but survivable in short windows with proper gear. I reinforced my respirator seals and triple-checked the P100 filters. They were already past their best-by date, but I didn't have the luxury of fresh stock. By day 21, I was ready. I sealed the shelter, left behind a handwritten note with radio frequencies and my destination coordinates in case anyone stumbled across it. Ash would come with me. I couldn't leave him behind. I loaded the ATV with supplies, strapped the rifle and AK across the rear rack, and mounted a modified Geiger sensor onto the front handlebars. The trip to Winchester, under normal conditions, would have taken 5 hours. In this world, there was no such thing as normal. I took back roads, fire lanes, old forestry trails, sections of unused pipeline maintenance paths. Most of the bridges were damaged or choked with abandoned vehicles. Some of the cars were burnt out, others untouched but eerie in their silence, still holding backpacks, water bottles, half-open wallets. Life paused at the moment of death. I didn't look inside the cars for too long. You could see enough just by the posture of what remained. By the second day, the battery on the ATV was running low. I camped inside a collapsed ranger station north of Upper Tract, wedging the entrance with concrete blocks. No fires, no light, just protein bars and thermal blankets under layers of radiation shielding. Ash curled up beside me, occasionally lifting his head at the soft creaks of the wind outside. Radiation levels had dipped to 3 rads hour that day. A sick part of me felt hopeful. That was survivable. Long exposure would still mean organ damage, but with breaks inside, I could stretch it. On the 3rd day of travel, I passed through Petersburg. The town was quiet, too quiet. The blast hadn't directly hit here, but it had passed overhead. Roofs were collapsed, windows blackened, power lines drooped like wet string. I found a National Guard outpost that had been hastily set up in a grocery store parking lot. Sandbags, camo netting, and an abandoned Humvee with its doors open and MRE wrappers fluttering in the breeze. Whoever had been here had left in a hurry, or hadn't left at all. Inside the store, the silence was oppressive. Broken glass crunched under my boots. I scavenged a few sealed items, medical gauze, iodine tablets, a pair of binoculars still in their blister pack, but most of the shelves had already been stripped. A splatter of dried blood marked the aisle near the pharmacy. No body, just drag marks. I didn't stay long. From Petersburg, I took Route 42 north through the mountains. The radiation levels dipped again briefly near Sugar Grove. On a whim, I turned toward the old Navy base, once used for satellite intelligence. I knew about it from years of tinkering with SDR and signal hunting. If anyone had reactivated it or converted it into a post-strike comms hub, I had to check. It was abandoned. The gates were twisted, scorched. A few structures were partially collapsed from blast shockwaves, their metal frames bent like origami. I swept the grounds in silence, checking for signs of recent life. There was none. But in the main control building, behind a locked steel door, I found something useful. An EMP-shielded server rack with a still intact laptop inside. The battery was dead, but the device looked clean. I bagged it and moved on. By the 5th day, I was getting closer to Harrisonburg. Civilization started to appear again in fragments, churches used as triage centers, burned out trucks full of supplies that never made it, and in one case, a 2-story farmhouse that had clearly been fortified before it was overrun. The back door had been kicked in. Inside, the bodies had been stripped of anything valuable. Whoever did it knew what they were doing. I kept moving. It was just past the town of Broadway, that I encountered my first living human in 22 days. I spotted the smoke plume first. A thin, lazy trail rising from a barn a few hundred yards off Route 259. I scouted from a distance with my binoculars. A small encampment had formed. 4 people, armed, rotating watch shifts. 2 looked injured. They'd set up solar panels and what looked like a small radio antenna fashioned from salvaged parts. A fire burned low in an old steel barrel. I considered approaching. Then I saw the tripwires, crude but effective. Likely shotgun shells rigged to wire and nails. They weren't looking for friends. I circled around the property wide, staying in the woods. Ash didn't bark once. Smart dog. We camped in an overturned culvert that night, about a mile out. I didn't make contact. I'd seen enough to know desperation wasn't always friendly. Maybe later, if I had something to offer. On day 28, I finally reached Winchester's outer edge. The town was battered but not obliterated. It looked like it had escaped a direct strike. Probably not a high-value target compared to DC to the southeast. Fallout had done its work though. Most buildings showed signs of weathering and ash corrosion. I saw evidence of multiple fires, looting, and what looked like small-scale gunfights. Bullet holes in siding, casings in the street. I found Nora Lane on the morning of day 29. Her signal was still transmitting from a short-range repeater mounted on the roof of the county courthouse. The courthouse itself was locked down with sandbags and steel shutters. I approached slowly, unarmed, with Ash leashed and my hands raised. Someone was watching. I knew it. I could feel it in the way the birds weren't singing and the wind seemed to shift. Then the intercom crackled. Drop the rifle and remove your pack. Step back 5 paces. I did as instructed. 2 people emerged from the side. One woman, early 40s, lean and alert, with a navy ball cap and a sidearm low on her hip. That was Nora. The other was younger, late 20s, ex-police judging by the vest. Both looked ragged, worn, but alive. Behind them, the old courthouse loomed like a fortress repurposed for a new war. The steel shutters over the windows were welded in place, and makeshift camo netting drooped across the roofline. It was clear this place had weathered multiple threats and wasn't here by luck. They didn't smile, just size me up the way survivors do, calculating value, danger, weakness. I kept my hands visible and my posture non-threatening. Ash sat at my side, ears perked but tail still. He knew not to move unless I told him. Name? Nora asked flatly. Cole Madison, survivalist. Spent the last 4 weeks in a bunker 30 miles south of Franklin. Picked up your signal 5 days ago. Who else is with you? No one. Just the dog. The younger one, whose name I'd later learn was Rafi Cortez, stepped forward and frisked me without asking. He was quick, professional, checked under the arms, boots, belt line. Found the folding knife in my boot, looked at it, then tossed it back into my pack. They weren't green. They'd done this before. They let me inside without another word. The door behind them was solid steel, likely salvaged from an industrial building. It clanged shut behind us like a vault. The interior was a mix of salvaged furniture, battery lanterns, ham radio equipment, and a thick layer of dust over everything not in daily use. 2 more people were inside. One man in his 60s with a left leg wrapped in gauze, and a woman who looked maybe 17, wearing a sweatshirt 2 sizes too big and clutching a hunting rifle like a lifeline. There were 5 of them total. Nora, Rafi, Jonah, the injured man, Leah, the girl, and myself. Ash was the 6th, and strangely, the first to be welcomed. Leah immediately knelt and hugged him without a word, her eyes wide and wet. They had food, but it was running low. Water was stable thanks to an old pump system beneath the courthouse, likely a backup reservoir from the civil defense era, still holding about 400 gallons when they found it. It was gravity-fed, which meant they didn't rely on electricity. That was smart. Their generator, a propane-fed Onan they'd pulled from a decommissioned broadcast truck, ran for just 1 hour a day. Power was rationed to radio operations, battery charging, and minimal lighting. I spent my first night on the ground floor, inside an old judge's chambers converted into a supply room. I didn't sleep well. Too many noises, too many unknowns. Every creak in the walls felt like a warning. The next morning, Nora gave me the full rundown. She'd been a radio tech in the Navy for 12 years, most of it stationed at Norfolk. After retirement, she taught comm systems to local volunteer fire departments. When the bombs fell, she and her sister had been en route to DC on a supply run. Her sister didn't make it. Nora made it to Winchester by chance, hitched with a convoy that dissolved into chaos on the I-66 overpass outside Front Royal. She holed up in the courthouse alone for nearly 2 weeks before other stragglers found her. Raffi had been a beat cop in Harrisonburg. He'd lost his entire precinct in the first strike. The others were local orphans of the collapse. It was Jonah who pointed me toward the map, the one covered in red dots and handwritten notes in blue ink. The impact sites were easy to recognize: Baltimore, Norfolk, Richmond, DC, Philadelphia, and Pittsburgh. But it was the secondary data that concerned him. Radio bursts from unidentified sources, all starting roughly 11 days after the main strikes. Encrypted digital bursts, recurring at exactly 0:03 UTC. Every night, same duration, same bandwidth, no origin signature. They'd first picked it up using a portable Yaesu rig Nora had scavenged from a state trooper's vehicle. At first, she thought it was a weather beacon glitching out. Then it repeated. Then it grew stronger. "We triangulated as best we could," she told me, pointing to a scrawled estimate on the map. "The signal's moving, slowly, south by southwest, like someone's broadcasting it from a mobile tower." "What does it say?" "That's the thing, we don't know. It's not English, not Russian, not Chinese. Not even encrypted military chatter, it's something else." I asked to hear it. That night, we fired up rig. The solar array only gave us a 30-minute window, but it was enough. We tuned to 9.420 MHz and waited. At 0:03 exactly, the static vanished. A pulsing tone began. 5 seconds of silence. Then a distorted burst of sound, 3 seconds long, repeating every 25 seconds, like a digital scream, too structured to be random, too alien to ignore. It made the hair on my neck rise. "I've tried every decryptor I know," Nora said. "It's not ours, not theirs. Either it's a new form of comms, or we're picking up something outside protocol." No one said extraterrestrial, no one said AI, but the possibilities hung there, like smoke in the air. Over the next 2 days, we prepared to investigate. We had the probable origin range between Mount Jackson and Timberville, moving south. If it was a mobile transmitter, it had wheels or legs. Either option was terrifying. Jonah couldn't walk far, so he stayed behind. Leah refused to go. She was too rattled by something she'd seen 2 weeks prior in the woods. Something she wouldn't describe. It was just me, Nora, and Raffi. We geared up with radiation suits, Geiger counters, rifles, and a handheld signal tracker. We moved at night, sticking to creek beds and overgrown trails. The world was hushed under a layer of ash and stillness. Animals had vanished, no birds, no insects, only the wind and the crunch of our boots. By midnight on the third night, we reached the signal source. It wasn't a tower, it wasn't a truck, it was a rail car. A single, burned, high-frequency broadcast car, partially derailed in a gully, overgrown with vines and scorched black along one side. Its antenna mast was still upright, connected to a battery pack larger than a refrigerator, clearly salvaged from military gear. The doors were sealed with weld lines, fresh welds, not old. "This wasn't abandoned," Raffi muttered. "This was planted." The tracker pulsed louder, the tone now warbling with interference. I climbed up the side of the rail car, pried open the maintenance panel, and saw something I still can't explain. Inside was a module I couldn't identify. Stainless steel, unmarked, wrapped in a web of carbon filament and strange coiled wiring. It pulsed faintly, emitting warmth despite having no visible power source. I touched it, just once. My vision flickered. For half a second, I wasn't in the railcar anymore. I was in a tunnel, not underground, but something else, like standing inside a wave of static. Shapes moved along the walls, smooth and symmetrical. The air buzzed with the same tone as the signal. I saw a face, or maybe a reflection, before I jerked my hand back. I stumbled down from the car, heart hammering, sweat pouring down my spine. We left in silence. Back at the courthouse, I didn't sleep. Nora began scanning for new signals. Something had changed. The broadcast was stronger now, repeating more frequently. The world outside hadn't just ended. It had been overwritten. The difference was subtle at first. Just a new tone behind the static. The bursts came every 10 seconds now, and layered over them was what sounded like a rhythm, as if someone, or something, was refining the transmission, filtering it, like it was learning. Every night at 0:03 UTC, it grew a little sharper, more defined. No language yet, but cadence, intention. We didn't talk much after the rail car. We were all trying to make sense of what we'd seen, or maybe not seen. I knew what I'd experienced when I touched the module wasn't just imagination. That moment in the tunnel, the electric air, the reflection that wasn't mine, it left something behind. A pressure in the head, like altitude sickness that wouldn't fade, and dreams, intense, vivid dreams of metallic rooms and impossible machines. I didn't share that part with the others, not yet. Nora grew more obsessed with the signal. She barely ate, slept in the comms room with her headphones on, her notepad covered in dense markings, some of them repeating phrases in block letters, some of them spirals. At one point, she began speaking to the radio, not into it, to it, whispering questions she never answered aloud. Rafi noticed, so did Leah, but no one confronted her. On the 28th day, just before dawn, the lights flickered across the courthouse. Then everything went dead. Generator, radios, headlamps, even my watch. The EMP meter I kept clipped to my vest didn't trip. This wasn't nuclear. This was something else, like the entire building had been put inside a Faraday cage. Ash paced in tight circles, whining low in his throat, his ears pinned back. Something was coming. Not a horde, not looters. Something wrong. I went upstairs to the rooftop hatch. Outside, the landscape was nearly unrecognizable. The ash field we used to mark our perimeter had patterns now, long concentric rings, too perfect to be natural, carved into the dust and soil like radar prints. They stretched across the northern tree line and ran straight toward the courthouse. Each line was about 10 meters apart, and they pulsed, not visibly, but through vibration. I felt it in my boots. It wasn't seismic, it was harmonic. The Geiger counter was silent, no rads. The air was cold, too cold for June. A new smell had crept in, chemical and earthy, like scorched plastic mixed with wet leaves. I woke the others. We gathered on the second floor with whatever weapons we had. 2 AR pattern rifles, a shotgun, my sidearm, and Rafi's old service Glock. Nora didn't move. She was still in the comms room, whispering to a dead rig, eyes wide and glassy. Leah tried to pull her away, but Nora struck her across the face and screamed. "She's listening now," Nora said. "She's almost finished." That's when we heard the sound. It started low, a kind of sub-bass pressure wave that made the floor tremble. Then it grew, a rising pitch layered beneath what sounded like machine breath. Rhythmic, inhuman, mechanical, but organic in its timing, like a massive iron lung operating just out of sight. Rafi and I swept the west wing while Leah tried to calm Nora. Jonah was in no condition to move. His fever had returned 2 days prior, and we hadn't been able to get antibiotics since the pharmacy runs had dried up. Outside the barricaded windows, movement. At first, I thought it was fog. Then I realized it was moving too deliberately. A tall shape, no face, no light, just motion. Then another. Thin limbs, too long for the human frame. No footsteps, no speech, just a presence, tall and shifting, walking through the ash without leaving prints. I trained my rifle, but instinct told me not to shoot. Raffi wanted to fall back to the basement, but we never made it. The signal returned, this time inside the building. Our radios, though unpowered, hissed to life. Then the power inverter in the solar rig began buzzing, though the panels hadn't seen sunlight in over 12 hours. The emergency speaker on the generator emitted a tone, exactly 417 hertz. Then a voice, modulated, female, not Nora's, not any of ours. Pattern aligned, integration phase commencing. Nora screamed. Blood trickled from her nose and ears as she dropped to her knees, whispering the same phrase over and over. Echo through the static, echo through the static. Jonah's scream followed, short, sharp, and final. We ran to him, but he was gone. No trauma, no wounds, just still, his eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling like he'd seen something too vast to understand. Then the silence returned. The pulse lines in the field outside dimmed. The vibrations stopped. The signals ceased. We didn't sleep that night. Raffi kept watch. Leah sat beside Ash, who hadn't moved since the first tone. His tail lay limp. His eyes tracked something none of us could see. The morning brought no sun, only a grey curtain of mist rolling over the hills. But we knew it was the 30th day, a full month since the bombs fell, since the sky had burned and the cities had died, and something had shifted. The map showed a new data point, a clean triangle formed by the last 3 bursts, centering not near Winchester or the Shenandoah, but further west, somewhere deep in the Monongahela National Forest. High-altitude terrain, rugged, isolated, which made it perfect for hiding something that needed to be heard but not seen. Nora was silent now, catatonic. Leah stayed with her, while Raffi and I prepared for one last push. We had enough fuel to reach the forest edge, using an old propane-powered pickup we'd salvaged from a farm 10 miles north. If the roads were passable and the signal continued, we'd follow it. Not because we wanted to, but because we had to. Whatever we'd experienced wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. It didn't destroy infrastructure or troops. It didn't level cities. It rewrote consciousness. The battlefield was the mind, and the objective wasn't annihilation, it was transformation. Before we left, I checked the radios one last time. The final transmission began at 0:03 UTC. This time, it was clear. No distortion, no encryption. Just a single phrase spoken in my own voice. Welcome, Cole. We're almost ready now. I looked at Raffi. His face had drained of all color. The future didn't lie in bunkers. It wasn't about canned food or ammunition or radiation meters anymore. The new world was already here, and we were the code it would use to finish itself. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.